Welcome to the Selectmen's Meeting for September 18th, 5:30. We actually started at 5:30. We've had a little bit of technical difficulty in terms of the tape, so we've just begun taping. But we've finished the preliminaries, except I'd like to go to the Pledge of Allegiance, please, if you'd join me for that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the meeting is now being tape recorded. Is there anyone else recording? Okay, thank you. Chairman's additions or deletions. There is one addition under work session. 4.2, I'd like for the board to discuss their October schedules and some potential agenda items, or at least what we know for agenda items, just to make sure everybody's on the same page with their scheduling, please. Public comments period. All two public people. No questions?
I want to keep you on your toes and not have one at every meeting.
Thank you. That'll keep me on my toes. Thank you. I'm going to skip down and just do a couple of these. We already completed 3.1. That was the pre-discussion of the board to talk about the questions that we were going to ask to all of the town council applicants. 3.2, review, approve, sign a common victualler license application for Jason Gerard of Better Foods Company, LLC. Do I have a motion?
I move the board approve and sign a common victual license application for Jason Gerard, the Better Foods Company, LLC.
Second. Been moved and seconded. I have a question.
I do too.
You have the paperwork?
I don't have the live paperwork. That's been on Carolyn's desk for tomorrow.
Okay, so
Signatures for tomorrow.
can we sign out of session?
That'll be outstanding.
Could we add that to the motion,
And I
please?
will add an addendum to my motion to sign out of session.
And second that, but I also have another question.
Sure.
The copy that I was looking at in the packet, it doesn't look like he signed the application.
I do have.
That's not a signature of the application. That's saying that he paid his taxes. The bottom right has signature of applicant.
It looks like he signed it above.
He signed saying that he paid his taxes.
Okay.
That's a statement
Okay.
to say that he hasn't actually applied for the
So
license.
would you like to amend the motion again, or do you want to bring this up for next?
It looks like he's been waiting a while. I don't.
Yeah, he signed everything else.
I just
Okay.
wanted to bring that point up because I noticed that I have no problem myself approving it as long as he comes in and signs it before it's actually
I'll-
processed through the
I'll
system,
strike
so
my
to speak.
original motion and just make one.
Okay. So you're withdrawing your
Yes.
original
We're
motion?
doing this intentionally for the town council.
Yes.
This is, so that, you know,
You've already gone way past me.
So they can see exactly
really how chaotic we are here.
pliable we can be, huh?
Okay.
Wayne, do you have a motion?
Take two. I move the board approve and sign out of session a common victualler license application for Jason Gerard, the Better Foods Company, LLC, pending his signature on the application page 3 of the packet.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. So, one more. Let's try one more. 3.3. Review, approve, sign an agreement with Fitchburg Gas and Electric Company, DBA Unitil, for outdoor LED light billing.
I move the board approve and sign an agreement with Fitchburg Gas and Electric, doing business as Unitil for outdoor LED light billing.
Second.
Any discussion? Jim? No?
I
Okay.
have one question.
Sure.
Does this have anything to, this is separate from us purchasing? Or have we already done
It
that?
is, the Energy Committee made the decision when they looked at the data that it makes better sense for Unitil to continue to own and for the upgrades to be done. And then this just changes the billing because these are types of fixtures that aren't included in Unitil's tariff. So they had to have this separate agreement recognizing
Oh,
that
okay.
these fixtures are going in.
Is this gonna save us money?
It's going to save us money and it's going to be a better light.
Oh, good, okay.
They're a lot brighter. Any other questions? Okay, if not, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. 3-4. Review request from the Energy Committee to authorize John Hume of MRPC to access and complete the reporting necessary in Mass Energy Insight Energy Reporting System. And to authorize the chairman to sign a letter to the regional coordinator of Green Communities Division granting permission to access and report in the Mass Energy Insight Reporting System.
Do you want two or one?
One would be
One
fine.
would be
Okay.
fine.
I move the board approve the request from the Energy Committee to authorize John Hume of MRPC to access and complete the reporting necessary in the Mass Energy Insight Energy Reporting System, and to authorize the chairman to sign a letter to the regional coordinator of the Green Communities Division granting permission to access and report in the Mass Energy Insight Energy Reporting System.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
11.
Not. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. 3.5, review approved policy 5-218, criminal offender record information. That's the second reading of the Corey policy. Did you have a chance to look that over? We voted on it at the last meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've heard no comments from any board members, Madam Chair. So it'd be
Okay.
appropriate for a second.
Okay.
I move the board approve policy number 5-2018, criminal offender record information, Corey, second reading.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. I just have one question. Is this is considered a Board of Selectmen policy,
It is.
is it not?
Correct.
Okay. Could we add that to the motion, please? Just,
Then the motion to add that this is a Board of Selectmen policy.
Oh, second, sorry.
okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous. All right. 6:15, interview for town council services with the law firm of, did you pronounce that?
Miaris.
Miaris.
So not Harrington. Harrington's the easy one.
Miaris and Harrington. Well, welcome. We have Tom Harrington and Chris Heap with us.
Thank you very much.
And I actually have, would you guys like a copy of this too? This is just the process that we're going to be following. There's one each for you. John, doing this one too.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, I'm just going to go over this and then we'll actually get into it, okay?
Sure.
Sure.
Introduction, you've introduced yourselves to all of us. So that's done. Review the process. What we'd like is for you to allow yourself 2 or 3 minutes to tell us a little bit about your firm's experience in municipal law, specific background and experience of the attorneys who will be assigned to work
Sure.
with Townsend. Then each board member has been assigned 3 predetermined and numerically assigned questions, so we'll take turns. Wayne's first, Cindy's second, and I'll follow up with my 3 after. Follow-up questions may be asked by board members in the same predetermined order. The chair will monitor the time and ensure that the process continues in an efficient manner to enable covering all of the topics. The board will entertain questions that you might have of us, and the firm will then finish with a closing statement. Does that sound okay?
Sounds great.
This is my type A process stuff. I drive Jim crazy with, but that's all right, Jim, you can say it.
I generally do. Just, we're mixed company tonight, so.
Okay, so I think, Wayne, you're first.
Okay,
Well,
welcome.
no, they're first, actually.
Actually, they're first.
They're
Yeah.
Great.
first. So a little intro.
Great. Hello, everybody.
Who are you? How do you do things?
Thank you very much for having us out tonight. I'm Chris Heap, and this is Tom Harrington. We're from Miaris and Harrington, a 10-attorney municipal law firm in Wellesley, located in Wellesley, Massachusetts. Our practice is dedicated almost exclusively to municipal law. Our firm, at any point in time, may have a handful of private clients, but for the most part, all 10 of our attorneys are devoting substantially all of their legal practice to doing municipal work for our client towns at all times. Our firm currently serves as town counsel to 8 towns: Carlisle, Hamilton, Hopkinton, Littleton, Reading, Stockbridge, Templeton, and Wellesley. We provide a full range of town council services to all 8 of those towns. In addition to those towns where we serve as town council, at any given time we're serving as special counsel on selected matters in a handful of other towns in addition. We're currently serving as special town counsel in Needham, where we're helping the town build a new police and fire stations and a new public safety telecommunications system. We're currently serving as special counsel in Palmer, where we're helping them with some zoning enforcement litigation. And we're currently serving as special counsel in Weymouth, where we're helping the town oppose a natural gas compressor station. That's the firm and what we do. I've been with the firm since 2005. I do general municipal work for all of our client towns, and also focus a substantial portion of the practice on land use, zoning, and affordable housing work, essentially assisting all of our land use boards and officials in town. Tom's been with the firm since 1990, and he's currently serving as lead town counsel in Carlisle, Littleton, Wellesley, and Templeton. And what we're proposing as part of our application to serve as town council is to have the 2 of us serve as town council, with myself designated as lead and with Tom serving as the primary backup. We currently, the 2 of us currently serve in pretty close to that capacity in Littleton and Carlisle, where Tom is the appointed lead, but the 2 of us effectively function as sort of co-town council.
Co-leads, yeah.
And either one of us are able to step in for the other at any given time to help out anybody in town, including the Board of Selectmen and the town administrators of both towns. We are like I said, we are a full-service municipal firm. We, with 10 attorneys on board, are equipped to handle just about any legal matter that could come in front of the town. We are, so we're staffed to handle all of the town's legal needs. We work routinely on town meeting. We handle the annual town meetings in the spring and usually special town meetings in the fall for all 8 of our towns. We work closely with those towns in drafting the warrant articles, getting the warrant in shape, drafting new bylaws, bylaw revisions, doing everything any of those towns need to get ready for town meeting. And we pride ourselves on taking the time necessary to sort of talk to the town about each and every article in the warrant, trying to figure out exactly what the town is trying to accomplish with each, and try to tailor our work to help accomplish what the town's trying to do. So I could keep running down the list of all that we do in the firm, but I'm quite sure I've exhausted my 2 minutes. So as Tom
As the
pointed
note says.
out, I don't want
You
to.
haven't been timing.
Yeah, I don't want to belabor all
It's
of
in my head, yeah.
that. It is suffice it to say that we do substantially all the legal work for all of our towns, and we would love to. We're equipped to do it. We are very good at it, and we would love to be able to do it for you.
Did you want your 2
No,
minutes?
I'll help answer questions, but we thought we'd have Chris do the whole intro,
Okay.
keep it consistent.
Any questions on what they've presented?
No, I think it was fantastic.
Cindy? Oh,
let us get through our questions, and then we'll see what they say.
Right.
I think they would answer the questions that are in my head, within our questions, so.
I actually do have a question now. You said that you're full service. What about, do you cover like charter?
We
You know,
do. Yeah,
Have
we've
you worked
done
with
charter
communities,
review and
charter
drafted
reviews?
charters. We have, yeah. So
Okay.
not all of our towns have charters, but I think 3 of them do. And so we've done wholesale rewrites and minor edits and anything in between.
Okay.
The only caveat I would add to the full service is that we don't generally do labor work.
Right, I knew you
Other-
didn't
We do
go in for
employment,
that.
but not labor.
Right.
Other than labor, that was the
Okay.
one caveat.
Yeah, that's fine. That's right.
Since we don't do it, we don't count it.
Okay. Just want to take one note. Wayne, you can start.
Okay. Well, thank you, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll start off with my first question. Can you and your team describe how you'd go about handling a question of the law that has some ambiguity to it? Whether it be state, charter, or...
Sure. Well, I think we're, in municipal law, I think we're used to dealing with questions with ambiguity all the time, whether it be in a local bylaw or a statute that could have been written more clearly. I feel as though that's an exercise we have to deal with on an almost daily basis.
Okay.
I think we would have a couple different steps that we would employ in dealing with that situation. One, to the extent a charter provision, bylaw, or statute are ambiguous, I'd want to understand why the question is being asked by the town, and if the town had if there's a goal in mind at the town level or a result that the town is hoping to attain. Not every legal question can not every legal question can be answered in a way that pleases the client town, but some if there's some ambiguity, it is important for us to know what the town's position is or desired result is. So we'd at least want to understand that before we get started entering the question. The second way we'd go into it, I should have said it first. We'd research it exhaustively. I mean, if there's a case out there that we can find after an hour's worth of research that answers the question, we'll find that. But accepting that, I think the next thing we'd do is we would start kicking it around the office. We are a small, not small, but we're a 10-person firm. We work together very well. All of us do municipal work, and sometimes those kinds of questions can benefit from some collaboration internally in the office before we put it into a final answer and deliver it back to the town. So the firm generally, the 10 members of the firm generally eat lunch together every day, and we all have open door policies in our office. So we're constantly sort of barging in and demanding from one another that we kick those kinds of questions around. So we would try to work on the question internally with 1 or 2 or 3 of us, or the whole lunch table, and try to vet, to talk about it, analyze it, and vet whatever answer we're coming up with internally before we turn it back around and deliver it to the town. So I think, given our size and the way we tend to work, we offer sort of a collaborative approach, and our answers generally benefit from some deep internal thinking on anything that's hard or ambiguous. And when we deliver the answer, it generally has the sort of the air of consensus from a couple of us before we get it back to you.
Okay.
And all of that, I would add, is no town has ever charged for that sort of like work process internally. That's just sort of, I think, a happy byproduct of the way we tend to work around the office.
I was going to say that lunch table generates a lot of money.
Nah. Costs us money. I would add to that so I think my favorite tool is the phone. Email is essential, and we all have to be on email, and we're all going to, we're going to respond. We're going to get questions by email. We're going to respond by email. That's the way many people function now. But when you get a question like that, before you start the research, you want to have a phone call just to talk a little bit about the understanding, as Chris said, why the question's being asked. And you want to have a phone call before you release the answer to say, okay, here's how I think we're going on this. And sometimes the answer is, I don't have a definitive answer for you. My best advice is this. My safest advice is this, but let's talk about where you're trying to get, and maybe we can get you there. And in my opinion, the best way to perform that function is on the phone or in person. You just get a lot more done.
Good. Okay, thank you. Next one is, can you describe how you'd handle dispute between two elected boards in said town?
Two elected boards. You want me to take this one? We'd figure out if one of them was the Board of Selectmen. So we do run into this. It's not uncommon. And I think you need to start with what's the dispute about. And, one of these boards is likely going to have more authority than the other board. So you need to understand where the authority is coming from and why, say, the board with less authority is interested in the issue. I have taken the step of having a joint meeting with both boards. I don't think that's necessarily or always that effective, because sometimes it can just, you've got two boards in session and they're just going to beat their chests to get their point across. So at some point, we have to do the research. We need to understand what the conflict is, and we need to resolve the conflict. And likely one board's not going to be happy with that result. And then we'll kind of work through that the best way we can, in conjunction with the town administrator. But we'll be honestly looking for a lot of advice from the town administrator and other staff to figure out what you think the solution is and see if we can help broker that. We kind of have an offhand where we talk about daytime government and nighttime government. And so daytime government is Jim and his team, and nighttime government are the elected and appointed boards. And, we see more conflicts with nighttime government than daytime government. But we're here to work with both, and with Jim's direction and this board's direction, we hope we can get you where you want to go.
Okay. The third question is kind of related to that a little bit. What kind of mediation services do you offer, if any?
We don't have official, so we don't act as mediators. We attend mediation on behalf of our clients, but we don't mediate ourselves. That said, one of the things lawyers do is, work with, clients are not always a single point. There's often multiple points, and oftentimes we work with to either try to lessen the dispute or box off the dispute. So it's hard to say without kind of knowing the actual problem and what we're facing and how we approach it. But I think the best thing is to keep the communication flowing, and as I said, one board is not likely to like your answer, and so it's explaining the answer to them and defending the answer to them, and then seeing if you can move on from there.
And the only other thing I'd add to that is trying to build a good working relationship with all the boards on, sort of the routine work that might come in front of us. I mean, I think if it comes to a point of conflict where we're called upon to mediate, hopefully we've had a period of time before that where we've worked well with the planning board or the conservation commission or whatever board there happens to be a dispute with. So we've developed an understanding with all of the component boards in town that we're sort of fair players and are attempting to answer all of their questions in good faith. I mean, I think so. We always pride ourselves in trying to build a good relationship with all boards in all towns at all times, and I think if we've managed to do that, which we've done in other towns, it would be easier to navigate those
Yeah.
points of conflict if and when they arise.
The longer we've been in town, the more effective we'll be at it, because I do think we have a good reputation and get a good working relationship. And when you're new to town, don't mean to shoot myself in the foot, but when you're new to town and you go into a board for the first time, who are these guys?
Right.
You do have to prove yourself a little bit.
There's a honeymoon period, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Cindy. Okay. Could you share an example of an ethical dilemma that you've been faced with and how you dealt with it?
Personal, like a personal,
Personal, I mean, something professional, but individually, or if you've had one in your practice.
yeah, that's a unusual question. Do you have any? We are conflict free. I guess the best example would be, I have had incidences where I represent two abutting towns. And we have a policy, not an absolute rule, but a policy not to represent two abutting towns. Sometimes we represent Wellesley and Needham, Needham on a small way and Wellesley as town council, but nothing where the two towns are either butting heads or working at cross purposes. But I think the difficulty is when you do, in the municipal field, represent two abutting towns, eventually you're going to get to the point where your work for Town A may negatively impact Town B. And I think the challenge and the important function is getting, letting the parties know and getting out of that soon enough. And sometimes you can let it go farther than you should, and then you're, backpedaling a little bit. I'm remembering something that happened to me in my early days when I was representing, it's kind of special counsel, and I was young and trying to get business, and so I was special counsel in two abutting towns and trying to please them both, and, slowly realizing I have to make a decision here because I can't please them both. So I guess that would be the best example I can come up with.
Okay, would you, as a firm, would you attempt to represent both the towns on issues, or would you?
When we do represent two towns, both towns know about it, so before we work in Needham, Wellesley knows we're going to work in Needham. Needham knows we work for Wellesley. And so at kind of this phase of the practice, it's more of a routine identification of, we've got a problem, here's how we address the problem. So with some success comes the ability to understand the problem's coming and get rid of it and realize it's not going to be the end of the world, as opposed to a young lawyer trying to.
Would that be a
Work your way up.
recommendation for one of the towns to get a different counsel? Or would you-
Both towns.
Absolutely.
Both towns get a
Yeah,
different
both
counsel?
towns.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, if you.
Oh, because even
Right,
if you're
and-
not representing the case, you're representing the town in another way, and that could still get messy.
Right.
Right, okay.
Right.
Okay. Good.
With age comes wisdom, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Hopefully.
Okay, and I assume you've had the next problem. How have you handled the situation where you've provided legal guidance in the form of an opinion, yet the board chooses to proceed in a contrary direction? In other words, they didn't take your advice.
I'm trying to think of a recent example where that's happened. And
I think I have one. So, so in that case, so here's how I think we all view ourselves. So the boards do not have to follow our advice. I mean, in some ways, we are the least powerful people in town because we can't do anything. We can tell you what we think, but we can't, make you do anything. And sometimes that's the direction is go make them do something, like in a dispute. Well, we can't make them do anything. All we do is talk and write, and hopefully they take our advice, but they don't always. And if they don't, I think it's incumbent on council to then represent that board as best you can. So to me, it's, okay, you didn't take that advice, so now you're here. Well, let's do our best to represent you here. And let's see what we can do to work you out of whatever situation you want. So we're not here, to scold or to say, I told you so, because who needs that? I think we're here. If you take the advice, I think it'll work better. I think we give good advice. But if you don't, and you find yourself in a situation, well, then let's move on and solve the problem as best we can.
And the only other thing I'd add to that, which I think is a good example of our general approach, is that I think we'll take we'll go to the extra length to attempt to explain ourselves in a way that will help the board do what we've suggested that the board do. In other words, if the board wants to take a position contrary to what we've recommended, again, that's within the board's purview. But we can deliver our legal advice in a couple of different forms, or a combination of a couple of different forms. It could be a letter, it could be an email, it could be a phone call, it could be a meeting with a chair, either by phone or in person prior to a meeting. So if we think the board is poised to do something contrary to what we've suggested is it might be the best path, we're not going to just issue a letter and then let the board do what it wants at the meeting. We're going to, if we sense that there's a potential conflict there, we'll really work to at least try to explain ourselves fully, whether it be in writing and in person, or both, so that if the board does something contrary to what we've recommended, it's doing it at least with a full understanding of what our recommendation has been.
Yeah, and it's not, I think in that situation, it would not be unusual for us to contact town administrator and say, just keep you in the loop, we issued this letter, we're getting feedback that they're not liking it and they're going to go in a different direction, and take direction, hey, Chris, maybe go to that meeting and see if you can do a better job explaining it to them or answer some of their questions. So I think we want to try to get them to make the right decision. We want to make sure that if we know they're not going to make the right decision, that we're letting everyone know, and that we're working as hard as we can to redirect them. But if it all fails, then I think we just need to accept the fact that they're an elected board and had the right to make the wrong decision, and move on from there. Try to fix it.
I'd like to add a question in here that's kind of a follow-up. It's not
As long
dire.
as it's a follow-up to that
It
question.
is. It's
Okay.
kind of, it might go off.
Well,
No, it's not.
I know.
Let me ask it.
Can
and
we
then-
just talk for 1 second about why I'm concerned? And that is, we're trying to stick with the same questions for every firm.
Yes, we are.
Okay, so,
And if we're going out of turn too, because the follow-up is supposed to be after we're completed.
do you want to circle back on that one in
And
case?
C does give follow-up. So after everybody asks the questions, you can come back with follow-ups.
Okay, don't forget that question.
Okay.
Write it down.
I'm gonna.
Take a second.
All right, please describe an example of a situation where you believe your advice and guidance produced a favorable result in the community. Conversely, please describe an example of a situation where your advice proved incorrect and produced an adverse result, if that occurred. And also, if you could talk about what happened in the community on these situations, and when I say where your advice proved incorrect, such as it was ruled against in a court or the AG ruled against your decision, was not that it was not accepted, but that it was had problems.
What you got?
Favorable result in a community. A relatively recent example that I think was a great success for one of our towns was there was a 40B project proposed in one of our towns probably this point a couple of years ago. But this was in Littleton, in a part of town where it was not very well received. It was, I believe, a 190-unit proposal originally, involving a couple of single-family houses as part of the 40B and great big apartment buildings, which were not in keeping with the general neighborhood. Now, all 40Bs were out of whack with the general zoning scheme that the town would normally adopt, but this one was quite controversial in town, and in the early hearing stages produced a considerable number of very, very upset neighbors and residents in town. However, as that hearing process went on, the developer was pressured by the ZBA and by town council to substantially revise its project in a way that eventually met with more favor by members of the public. The project was eventually approved. It was eventually approved in connection with the ZBA decision and a host community agreement that the developer entered into with the town that provided for substantial mitigation payments to the town as part of the development getting approved. And the project eventually put the town over the 10%. And there were agreements with the developer that it would remain a rental project, which was sort of key to keeping the town over the 10% forever. The developer wasn't going to come back in. One of the big fears was the developer was going to come back in, switch it from a rental to an ownership project, and that would have had the effect of dropping the town from below the 10% mark. So there was months and months on that one of substantial negotiation with the developer, the ZBA, and residential abutters around the project. But again, eventually that was approved in a way that people were ultimately relatively happy with, in a way that got the town over the 10% and resulted in substantial mitigation payments to the town. So that's a success.
I'll do the failure. So it was a 40B, and so this particular development needed two ways in and out, and so they had one way in, and so if they limited the development to about 500 feet, then they could do cul-de-sac and go back out. But they wanted to go in about 2,000 feet, and I was confident that if a town turns down a 40B, it goes to the Housing Appeals Committee, and you probably know this, but that's the kind of first appeal. And I was confident that they were not going to allow a 2,000-foot cul-de-sac because they hadn't yet. And while there was a road close to it that they could, kind of at the back, they could connect to another road, but the town owned a little piece of property in between it. And I took the position that because they owned that land, they did not have to allow the developer to use it. It was the town's land. The town, in my opinion, was under no requirement to allow the developer to connect to this other road over town land. And that's where I lost the case. And I, to this day, think I was right, but the courts and the Housing Appeals Committee did not think I was right. So an unfavorable decision was issued, and I talked about it with the town. I explained their appeal rights and kind of walked through the whole process, and they decided not to move on. I did do more work for that town after that, and continue to do some work for that town, kind of on an off and on basis, but I thought I was right, and the powers that be did not.
So the controversial development went forward?
It did.
Okay.
It did. And I will say that the positive experience that you heard about was somewhat borne out from that negative experience, because when dealing with a 40B, if you're going to deny it and it goes to court, you really don't know what's going to happen. And as your attorney, I think I'll tell you I can offer no assurances. And if you can work something out, that's the better way. At least you've got some surety, so.
So you do have some mediation experience.
There it is.
What was the underlying logic of the HAC that compels the town to use its land?
Right? Now let's talk.
Yes.
So
We
they,
can do that after. We can do that after. I'm just, that blows my mind, that's all.
It's fascinating, though. I'm next. Could you describe the process that your firm uses to update clients on the ever-changing laws and regulations that we need to be concerned with, especially when we have a variety of boards that you
Sure.
have to deal with?
We, once a month, and you can find these on our website, we issue just a general newsletter about topics of interest in municipal law. Usually each newsletter has about 2 or 3 articles of things that have come up that month. Those, I think, the articles in the newsletter, range in importance from things just, absolutely, a land court case on an absolutely arcane provision of the subdivision control law that, only maybe like 4 people who receive this might have any interest in, to things that are new developments that are substantially more important than that. So we have the newsletter every month addressing things as they come up every month. In addition to that, we will do written client advisories to towns on substantial changes in the law that are of substantial importance to the town. So, for example, when the open meeting law and the public records law were amended recently, we did long written advisories to the towns that went out on letterhead to everyone, intended to explain the changes and bring people up to speed. So we if there's something that is really of great relevance and importance, we'll treat that differently than we would the sort of monthly articles in the newsletter. In addition to that, we are generally, if there is a change in the law of substantial importance, we will come out to the towns and explain them to whatever boards are affected. So we are usually more than happy to come out if there's a change to the open meeting law and put on a hour and a half long presentation and question and answer session with anybody who wants to attend. We can do those both when there's a change in law that requires us to come out and address it right away so that everybody knows how to react. And we're also generally willing to do 1 or 2 of those a year as a refresher course on points of interest either to the Board of Selectmen or the town administrator, where there's a feeling that maybe boards in town could benefit from a reminder about how to do things. So we have a couple different ways of doing it, but I think those are probably the 3 most important ones.
Yeah, I actually advise, with the way the open meeting law and the public records law is going right now, I advise a once-a-year refresher for all boards, just to, it's an important law. It's not always logical, so A doesn't always follow B. So it's important to talk about how we conduct our business. And we don't want you to get in trouble. We want you to follow the law, but we also want you to have the tools that you need so you can make the right decisions.
Thank you. Could you describe your pricing, how you charge, and also what portion of the town's legal matters would be handled by attorneys versus paralegals or whatever?
Sure. What we've proposed is to charge $205 an hour for the services of the firm's partners and $185 per hour for the services of the firm's associates. Mm-hmm. We do have 2 paralegals in the office who I think we generally use primarily for title work and registry work. And I would say that the paralegal component of it would be an almost undetectable amount of any given legal bill. The lawyers do all of the legal work. I would say the partners would do the bulk of the legal work, but the paralegal certainly would be almost unnoticeable, other than perhaps a trip to the registry to record a deed conveying land to the town or something to that effect. That's I think the only time you would ever see a paralegal time on one of our bills.
Okay.
This may need a little bit more explanation, but have you ever provided an opinion related to a question that you were not asked?
Feels like a
Basically,
billing question, too.
If you were witnessing a board proceeding along a path that may put them in legal jeopardy, do you raise a flag?
Yeah, I'll let, maybe both answer this one. I'll tell you on that one, I think it's incumbent upon us to let the board know that they may be straying. I would be reluctant to do it in a letter if I didn't first try to do it in a phone call or in a meeting. Because if I'm gonna, I want this person to comply. And I feel like my powers of persuasion, whatever they are better approaching it, in a way that wouldn't necessarily embarrass right off the bat. If the person is steadfast in violating, then I think at some point you have to go on record to say, you're not doing this right. But it wouldn't be I wouldn't want that to be the first step. I think we're all on the same team. We're all kind of pulling for the town. So my inclination is to start off in an informal matter and take guidance and understand what the town's position is. But see if you can handle it informally, and if you can't, and it's a real violation, I think you have to go on record at some point.
Do you want to add?
Just that I think that the circumstances in which I would answer a question I hadn't been asked would be generally limited to sensing an imminent violation of the law or a bad path or something that was going to trigger litigation the following day or something like that. An imminent bad result manifesting in front of me. In those circumstances, I agree that it's our job to try to steer things in a better direction. Other than that, if I'm certainly not normally going to weigh in on legal matters on matters of general town business on which I have not generally been asked a question. Right. We would, in the day-to-day business of town, we would, I think, more normally wait for someone to ask us a question before we.
We're not looking to make work. If we see something going wrong, I think it's a call to Jim. Jim, notice this, wanted to bring it to your attention. Do you want me to do anything about it? Yes or no?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Wayne, do you have any follow-up questions?
I just have one to your billing question. If I remember correctly, there was a flat fee retainer offering in there. Could you explain a little bit about how that would work?
I think what we said in our written response is that we'd be more than happy to discuss it with the town. We generally tend to prefer a flat hourly rate for a flat hourly billing rate with our towns. But we are certainly happy to discuss a retainer. The difficulty we find when responding to RFPs for towns is proposing a specific retainer because we don't know how the town tends, without firsthand experience, we don't know how the town has historically used town council. We don't know how the town is looking to utilize town council going forward, and how much work we're really talking about. So it's very difficult to propose a dollar amount that is going to be fair for both sides without a deeper discussion with everybody. And when I say fair for both sides, what I tend to mean is a monthly flat fee retainer that is on average generally indicative of something close to the hourly rate that we've proposed. We do have experience with retainers, and in some months the town can achieve, a lot more legal work than it would have otherwise under an hourly fee. And in some months, we might come out ahead, but I think as a general rule, they're hard to arrive at, and oftentimes the amount of legal work is, they're difficult, they can be difficult
Right.
from our side.
Right. If the retainer is to spread out your costs over the year, we can work with you. And just being honest, we think we have a really fair hourly rate, and we think it's very competitive and better than most. But we're not, if our hourly rate through a retainer falls, so if we're charging you $1,000 an hour, but Chris is putting in 10 hours, which is $100 an hour, we're going to have trouble keeping the doors open. And so that's our approach.
Okay, fair enough, thank you.
Yeah.
Cindy? Yeah, I think my follow-up is more related to Sue's third question than my second question. When you're giving, or when you're asked to give an opinion, or when you're actually providing it, are you looking primarily to speak more specifically to the question, what you're asked? Gee, the board is wants to proceed in a certain direction on a certain issue, and the board asks, can we do this? Or are you looking at the more comprehensive issue and looking to give an opinion on all the ramifications of, rather than just, yes, you can proceed and we'll defend you on this process, even though you might not agree with it, but sometimes it might become a political football, it kind of, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
Or would you give a more comprehensive and say, like you may have mentioned, well, why you want to do that, and give an opinion that includes alternatives? Or are you looking, when you're asked to give an opinion, when you're giving it, do you stay more in line with what you're being asked? Can we do what we think we want to do?
Want to take first crack? You got it.
Sure. I think we would look at, I don't know if this answers the question, but we would look at everything comprehensively. I mean, if a question has a bearing on different aspects of law or different strategic components, we would attempt to look at all of it to try to come up with the best answer. If the answer is that if the answer from the word is, can we do this? And the answer is yes, that may be a simple answer and perhaps be the end of it. If the answer is, can we do this to achieve this goal, and the answer is no, you can't do that, then we might look at the goal that you have in mind and say, you can't do it that way, but maybe here's some other ways, here's some alternative approaches that the board might want to consider. So I think in the cases where we have to deliver advice that's going to be that the town's not going to like because it suggests they can't do what they might want to otherwise do, then we're, I think, going to be maybe more likely to try to work with the town to devise some alternatives to get them to the same point or get place close. Now that's terribly abstract, and I don't know that, because it's so abstract, I don't know if it makes sense. But we're always going to try to get you to where you want to go.
Yeah.
Well,
Let me take a crack.
Yeah.
So, it
It might
is.
be giving you an ethical dilemma now, but
Well, no. So I think we're not looking to be the law police, and I would rarely, if ever, issue an opinion that the client doesn't know is coming. So I don't know the kind of the actual facts around your question. So I'm kind of trying to fill in the blanks a little bit, but we're not going to, we're not cowboys, off, kind of shooting stuff off. I see they're doing that wrong, so here comes an opinion at you. If someone's doing something wrong, and we know they're doing something wrong, we need to let someone know that they're doing something wrong. Otherwise, I think we're not doing our job. And I think that would start with the town administrator. this board is not, either they're not doing it right, or they've gone astray, or something's going on. In consultation with Jim, how do we get them back? And I think I'm repeating myself a little bit, but it might start out with a conversation with them, it might be a visit to them, and it might ultimately be a letter. But I don't want to make those decisions on my own, whether I'm going to answer their specific question, or if I'm going to tee off a few other issues that they probably should have thought about. I wanted to know what the client wants and kind of all work towards fixing the problem, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm just looking, are you going to work with identifying the underlying issues in the question that might be
Yeah.
asked? If you
I don't...
work with it, not necessarily a
Right.
written opinion that goes off.
Right. I don't want a
wouldn't
lawyer...
expect that.
Right. I don't want a lawyer that's going to send me something and I'm going to go, I didn't ask him that question. Why am I getting this? I want a lawyer who's going to call me and say, here's what I see coming. Here's how we fix it. You let me know how you want to proceed. And if it's so severe that I say, boy, I got to tell you, Jim, I think I'm committing malpractice if I don't write a letter, then we'll talk about that too. But I don't know that I've ever actually been in that situation where I felt like I had to do something without the client's consent, somewhere along the line.
I have one little follow-up question, and it relates back to the question on informing the town and the boards about, what's going on. And it really has to do with help that you could provide for either reviewing and/or helping to revise, well, first of all, the charter, but also policies that we have, and especially in relationship to the current laws.
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm concerned about things that we don't even know need to be updated, bylaws, whatever. So how much do you help with things like that?
We help. We do that routinely when we're brought in as a new town and we're brought in as town council in a new town. I think we're well accustomed to, as part of our introduction to the town, if asked, we're generally more than happy to take a look at zoning bylaws, general bylaws, town charters, and offer comments on what we see that might be revised. I believe not long after we were brought in Hopkinton, there was we worked on a substantial charter reform there. I want to say within the first year of being town council. In Reading, when we were brought in as town council, there was a substantial zoning amendment review process underway when we were brought in. And we came in sort of late in the process, but we spent a lot of time in our first months in Reading sort of jumping into that process at the last minute and suggesting substantial revisions to their zoning bylaw. And I think something not too dissimilar is underway in Templeton, which is undergoing a recodification. And as that's happening, we're looking at their bylaws and saying, that looks like it might not have been looked at in a while. Here are some changes that we see based on the changes in the law that have happened since you first adopted this 20 years ago.
In other towns, so I know we did this in Wellesley, I think we did it in Carlisle, we call it a listening tour, where come to town hall, meet with a conscom, meet with the planning board, meet with the zoning board. And so, for example, I'll use the Conservation Commission. So you sit down with the Conservation Commission, you want to make sure first that they're associated with their umbrella organization. There's, for conscoms, it's the Mass Association of Conservation Commissions. One of our attorneys is the vice president there, so I know they work hard. I know they put out a lot of information, so that's the easy free one. You sign up for this organization, they're going to let you know what's going on, let you know where workshops are. So that's number one. Are you in touch with your umbrella organization? Number two, when you come to a meeting, do you have your regulations, your bylaw, the state bylaw, or the state statute, the state regulations, and whatever policies, so it's even as, it can be right down to, let's make sure everyone has a binder with all the applicable laws, because I've walked into lots of board meetings that, they're issuing order of conditions, not here, I'm sure, but, they're issuing orders of conditions and they haven't looked at the state regs in 2 years. So we want to make sure they understand what, kind of what their process is. And if they need help, it's kind of during that when we can say, you could not enforce this anymore. This was a popular provision 10 years ago, but we know that it's been shot down in court a couple of times, so on a board-by-board basis, or however the town wants to proceed, we can help you update and get in shape and get them functioning, because a well-functioning board is a happy board, right? If you know what you're doing, the job's pretty good, but when you don't know what you're doing, it can be a little hard and a little scary. So that's a process that we go through, and, we can do it on a small level or on a bigger level as much as the town wants.
Okay. Thank you. What's that?
I'm good.
You good? So what questions do you have for us?
I have a question. So what is your process, if I may ask? How is your decision-making going from here? How soon do you hope to have new town council in place, or what are you looking at?
We have 2 other firms that will be interviewing probably, and that's on our agenda, is to set the time. I'm thinking 2 weeks from now. But we've got to just adjust our
Sure.
calendars, okay? And I would hope it would be shortly after that we would, I'm hoping for a decision.
I don't want to drag this out either.
Yeah, I don't like to drag anything out.
Assuming our schedule can be negotiated amongst us and the other firms by November. I mean, it's mid-September now, but
By the end of October,
November, early
we
November.
should, or earlier, is what I'm hoping.
Great.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Does that work for you?
Absolutely.
Okay. And other questions?
That's it.
We are, just to let you know, we just formed a charter review committee.
Okay.
Okay? So we will have need of a town council to help.
Right. So our partner, Ray Miaris, is kind of our top charter guy, and he's spent 15 or 20 years, working for various towns.
And then
on various
after that,
subjects.
of course, charter changes, then you need to look at bylaws in relationship to it,
Yeah.
and policies
Yeah.
in relationship to those, so.
We call it the cascading motions.
Yeah.
You just move
The
this, and now
waterfall.
these all have to move,
That's
right?
a waterfall, that's right. So, just to let you know, that's where we're at right now, okay?
Sounds
Great.
exciting, yeah.
Yeah, getting work done anyway. Great, well, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks
Thank you very much for
having
having
us.
us.
Enjoyed it,
Do we have a
thank you.
closing statement?
Yeah, do you have anything else to say? I mean, I asked if you had questions, but do you think you
I'm
covered
just trying to
everything?
follow.
No, I think we
Thank
covered
you.
pretty much everything. We really appreciate you having us in. We think we'd be a great fit for the town. I think we've got 10, you've met Tom and I. Other than Tom and I, we've got a great team. Again, 10 attorneys total, all doing municipal law. I think we've got the expertise to do all the legal work the town needs, and I think we've got some great other members of the team that you get to know over time, specializing in licensing, open meeting law, public records, conservation and wetlands. We've got one of our partners spends almost all her time working on public construction contracts and procurement. So I think we've got what it takes to do the town's legal work, and I think it would be really fun and enjoyable working with you, and then we hope we get the chance to do it.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
for coming.
Thanks so much.
Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Do you have Dave Bevan in Winchendon.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Nice meeting you.
Thank you. The king of Lake Menominee.
What's that?
The king of Lake Menominee.
Exactly. I hope I didn't shoot myself in the foot. Take care.
Bye. Look at my notes, and make more notes before they go out of my head. So we're at 4.1, Town Administrator Updates and Reports.
Madam Chair, I have nothing, having just met last week.
Okay. 4.2, the only thing that I have, Board of Selectmen's updates, reports, whatever, is what I added, which is, can we all look at our schedules, please? I will try to be as accommodating as I can. My main concern is, because both of you guys have to go out of town occasionally, that we at least have a quorum in-house, and that we can commit to, okay? So, we may have to, for the public's knowledge, we may have to juggle things around and maybe look at another night or something to get everything done.
I'm fine with that.
And, where is it? Excuse me for just a second. I put this list together. Jim, my list things.
I have
you
it.
know? You have it?
Yep.
Oh, this is the new one.
Oh, the new-
I added some more.
Oh, okay, this is what you're talking
Yeah.
about. I'm sorry.
That's
Oh,
what-
okay. Is this the same list? as-
No, it's different.
Oh, it's different
Yeah, it's different. Okay,
in the list.
a new list, another
Okay.
list. Okay, so list,
Newest.
I'm gonna say current on it, okay?
Do you want to do dates first?
Well, the reason I'm showing you this is I'm thinking that some of this may lend itself better to like a work session kind of thing, or a couple of things in a real work session versus regular, regular meetings where we can cover a few of them. Okay, for example, number 12, we said we're going to talk about Town Properties Committee, discussion on roles, what their charge is, what the structure is or should be.
Do we have an actual?
Well, see, that's the problem. We need to talk about that. So I'm thinking that's a work session kind of thing. Because that's not going to happen in like 10 or 15 minutes. I just don't think it is.
What is if we don't have a properties committee?
Well, part of the thing is that people are asking, why don't we have a properties committee? Because
No.
we're supposed to have
But we
one.
have to set the goals.
People have
of the
to
charter and How
volunteer.
many people?
Well, it's hard to get people to volunteer for something that we can't define what it is and what they'll be doing. Okay, so I just think we have to back up. So I'm just using that for an
Okay,
example,
all right.
okay? I think there's a little bit of discussion that needs to happen. We'll have fun with that, okay? So we need to complete the town council interviews. I'm reluctant to continue with next week's meeting because Jim's not going to be here. And I think it's important for him to be at least present for those. So after the 25th, what you got going? Is there any time that you can't, any Tuesday that you cannot?
October 2nd, I cannot. I'm up 1, 2, 3.
Okay, so not,
But I can do 4th or 5th if we need to juggle.
okay. So Wayne, not the 2nd.
My calendar.
The following, I'll just go through October,
Just give me the bad days.
16, 17, 18, 19. And 20, what's this one?
And 20 what? I'm sorry, did you?
He only half said it.
Oh, that's what, I
I
wasn't
just
sure if I
double-checked.
didn't hear it or if you didn't
Double-checking.
say it. Okay, I'm sorry.
I'm just reading, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
10:24.
And so 19 and 24.
16th through the 19th?
Yes, I'm out,
You're out that whole week?
yes.
And,
I can do the 15th, I should say.
okay, hold on.
Yep,
The
I know.
knots.
I know, that's,
Knots,
those are
16,
my-
17, 18, 19, and 24.
and I'm just going to block off Halloween just because I can.
24
Just 'cause you can.
and 31, okay. Cindy, do you have any definite knots?
Well, the thing with my schedule, I do emergency work. I don't know sometimes until midnight or so.
The
Whether
day
I'll be,
before?
yeah. Like some of the work I'm doing right now is related to the gas explosion up in Merrimack Valley, and I couldn't.
Nobody could have predicted
No.
that.
Right, and
I
but that's the
understand.
type of work that I do, or
Okay.
if someone dies, and I mean, those are kind of things that I do unexpectedly. But I can't say that on October 2nd I'm going to be at an emergency. My only thought, and because of the type of work that I do, if I'm out of town during the day, like I had said, 5 o'clock usually does not work for me. If we're going to have something before 6, I can often, a 6 o'clock meeting, even if I'm 5 or 10 minutes late, I could usually do. 5:30 stuff is probably not available on most times, or it's unpredictable. To go forward, my recommendation to us would be just to, the important part that you mentioned was we need to have a quorum here,
That's right.
even if Wayne is
Correct.
going to have to call in.
Or you, if you're out of town
Right,
as well.
but because I'm unpredictable, and you're more predictable on your absences,
We'll go by his
if we go
schedule.
by Wayne, like if Wayne's not going to be here, if we
Then
don't
there's a
risk it,
possibility that you're not
if
gonna
you're
be.
going to schedule it, make it something that we can move along, or we just don't schedule. Use Wayne as the measure to say, let's not schedule at all. That way we're not canceling. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, well, that makes me reluctant to say October 2nd, because Wayne is not going to be available.
But I can do the 4th or the 5th.
But you could do the 4th.
Actually, you know what? I'm doing, I do have something, I do have work scheduled on October 2nd that it's relatively local. It's a scheduled issue. That I can do October 2nd.
You can?
Um,
Okay.
I'll be leaving there at 4. I can do 6 o'clock on October 2nd.
And can you call in?
I believe I can.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's next week.
Right.
2 weeks.
2
2
weeks.
weeks.
So I
weeks,
can't do that one.
But my concern there is it appropriate to interview town council that night? I think all 3 of us should be there to do an interview, okay? So what I'm thinking is, if you could call in, we'll have a regular meeting on the 2nd. And if you want, Cindy, we can say 6:30 if that makes it more comfortable.
No, I can,
6 is
it's
okay?
local enough
Okay,
that I
so
can be here
6
for 6 on the
6
2nd.
o'clock on the 2nd. And we could put some of the things that we have on our list on that regular meeting. And you said you could make the 4th?
Thursday or Friday? Yes. I'll be home the 3rd.
Okay. I can do either the 3rd or the 4th. Is there anybody who can't, potentially?
4th would be ideal, I guess.
Maybe we could try to schedule just the town council interviews for the 4th. And why don't we say 6:30 for the interviews?
Try to get them all that night.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have 2
2
left.
left, right, correct.
Okay, so it's 2 interviews, 6:30 for an hour, 6:30 and 7:30. And that's Thursday, 10:04. Okay? Then I'd be comfortable going down to the 16th, but you're not in all week.
No. We can meet the following week if we need to.
Pardon me?
The week of the 8th, if we just want to keep going.
Do you want to try for the 9th?
You can try, I don't have anything.
Okay, let's try for the 9th, okay? So 10-2 and 10-9, regular meetings. And then 2 weeks later is the 23rd. Can we do a work session that, on the 23rd?
I'm good
For
with that.
whatever we don't get cleaned up?
I'm good with that.
Does that sound okay, Cindy?
So far?
Okay. I understand, I know what. So
I mean, stuff's gonna
10:23,
happen,
we're gonna
so.
say a work session for unfinished business, huh? For old business. And try to plow through it, okay?
Good.
And what time, 6 o'clock, okay for that?
Yep.
All right. Did you get everything, Jim?
Yeah.
Okay. Does that fit in with your schedule, okay?
Absolutely.
All right, great, wonderful. Thank you for that. The list person that I am, I don't like it when my list gets beyond 10 things.
Can I add to this
Yes,
proposal?
oh,
if you
yes,
don't mind?
please. Oh, yeah, both of you. If you have any items that you want taken up over the next month or so,
Just one, so far, the executive sessions for the grievances that are hanging out there. I'd like to get those tied up.
oh, yeah, we've got, I have executive, but I don't have that, grievances. Okay,
And for the police report, I'd like update on staffing.
Cindy, you have anything?
No, not at the moment.
Okay, well, just let me know, all right?
Okay,
Okay,
thank you.
Madam Chair, I just emailed you each a copy of the Town Properties Committee bylaw. It's chapter 127, so wherever that's going to fit in, at least have that in your email. So
excellent,
to
thank
review.
you. Okay. And just by way of an announcement, the Charter Review Committee met for the first time and organized last week. They're going to attempt to meet on Thursdays,
Awesome.
or alternate Thursdays, every other Thursday. They seem to understand the urgency. I did reach out to Lauren Goldberg just to get a list of links and information. It was kind of referral, tell me who to contact about this and that, for some review. And she got back to me today, gave me about 8 places, links to go to, okay? So that's underway, okay?
Okay.
Do you have any updates,
I do not.
Cindy?
No,
No? Okay, and there are no announcements that I know of, which was 4.3, 4.4, no board correspondence.
We did receive one this week,
We did?
public records request.
Oh, that's right, we did. How's that going?
Which one?
The public records request,
The letter from the state.
Yes, that actually went out today in the mail to the requester and a copy to the
The state.
supervisor of public records.
Excellent, thank
Thank you.
you. So you did have an update.
Yeah, I guess.
Is there a copy of that available?
There is, yeah. I
Is
think
it?
it's actually in your file.
Oh, okay.
Okay, 4.5, approval of meeting minutes from August 21st, 2018. And I do have a question on those.
Okay. Do I have to make a motion first?
Sure.
I move the board approve meeting minutes from August 21st, 2018.
Second. I'm sorry, I'm looking up a date.
That's
Nothing
okay,
attention,
that's
sorry.
okay. I just have one question, and it's actually the reason that I asked to hold them until today. On 6.1.2, I wanted to make sure that I know this is what was moved, okay? Cindy King moved to affirm and/or appoint Marcy Furlong as the records clerk for the Townsend Police Department. Wayne Miller seconded. Wayne Miller clarified to affirm or appoint based on the legal opinion. We got copies of 2 legal opinions. In my opinion, neither of those answered the question that I had, so I submitted another.
Right.
So I'm thinking maybe we should just hold off on approving these minutes. I suppose it doesn't make a difference, but it makes a difference in terms of the effect of that.
Well, my understanding, and Wayne, it was your clarification, was if the opinion, if the information in the existing opinions was sufficient that it was a staff line position, so it was hired and you were affirming, then this motion covered that. If the opinions existing or a new opinion came back and it said no, it's yours to appoint, then he was covering that possibility as well by having both of those there. So regardless of
Okay.
how the opinion comes out, it's going to have been covered by the slash, the and
Okay,
or.
but do we have to be concerned about, I guess it doesn't matter. I mean, basically, the person's going to be working either way.
Correct, either
Okay.
as appointed by you or as hired by someone other than you.
Okay, all right. I'm okay with that then.
Okay.
All right, but I just wanted to clarify that.
That's fine.
Okay, then, any other questions?
Who was it seconded? I didn't hear.
Yes, you
Oh,
seconded
sorry.
it. Yes. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so that's done. And 4.6, review and sign, I think it's just the bills payable warrant out of session.
I remove board review and sign payroll bills of payable warrants out of session.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Wayne?
I move the board adjourn at 7:30.
Aye. Second. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good night.